Hey, everybody, welcome to Two Way. This is Two Way. Tonight, I'm Mark Halpern, your guide through the end of the week in the Trump transition and the Democratic Party's D search for a future. Really glad you're joining. We're going to do a little news at the top here. Then America's sweetheart, Meghan McCain, is here, and Meghan and I are going to chat a bit about what's going on. And then we'll take your questions. We may have some surprise guests. We'll see. So glad you're spending Friday evening here on the East Coast with us. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. Some of you are new because they're new people every day, which we are very grateful for. This is a different kind of platform. We have civil conversations. We have people across the spectrum, and we're here to learn. And if you don't like listening to a Democrat talk, go someplace else because there'll be Democrats talking. And if you don't like Republicans, same thing. The idea is to learn, listen, appreciate what the other side's point of view is, and people have strong feelings, and that's fine. Rigorous discussion is what we're about, just not anything that deviates from peace, love, and understanding and the presumption of grace. If you're here on the two-way platform, same thing, peace, love, and understanding. If you're in the chat on either place, please, no garbage. I say that knowing that there'll be lots of garbage. But also, you can raise your hand, your electronic hand, as some have already done, and get in on the conversation. We love that. Lots of returning people often want to ask questions. We bring them in episodically, but we'd also like new people. So if you've not been part of the conversation before and you joined tonight, now's the chance. We've had a lot of new people this week and extraordinary. And if you didn't watch the morning meeting and listen to John, the doctor from Tennessee, I recommend you go back and watch at least that part of the episode. As I said after he talked for a bit, I learned more from John about why Kamala Harris lost the election than pretty much anything I saw in the last month of the election. It's extremely articulate and insightful, talking about his perspective as a Democrat, lapsed Democrat, attracted to Bobby Kennedy. So I do recommend that to you. But also, it's the power of this platform to have somebody like that who we'd never talked to before. I don't know if he'd ever raised his hand before, but he'd never been called on. And he was just fantastic. And I've gotten feedback about John from Democrats and Republicans and independents about how insightful he was. And we say two-way conversations like no other. John was like no other, just incredible. So I recommend that to you. All right. Trump personnel. We were expecting some bombshell announcements today, and I don't think we got them. But we might during this program, so stand by. What we did get was another day of news focused about the Trump transition, almost exclusively on personnel, including some of the five very controversial nominees, which I'll talk about in a moment. Steve Chung, the campaign press secretary, is White House communications director. Sergio Gore, former aide to Rand Paul, longtime associates of the Trumps, will be head of presidential personnel. Big White House jobs don't require confirmation. They both worked on the 2016 campaign, so they've been in the Trump orbit for a long time. Doug Burgum, who last night was announced as a nominee for Interior, is going to be head of something called the National Energy Council. Remember how pivotal, at both politically and policy-wise, energy production is to this president-elect. So he'll be big there. The economic team, again, the two big jobs, head of the National Economic Council, Treasury, not named yet. Widely reported that Scott Bessent, who's been on two-way, is met with Donald Trump today in Mar-a-Lago. Question, is it him? Howard Lutnick, the head of the transition. Those were the two names sort of vying for Treasury. Now talk about a third person coming in because Trump doesn't like people campaigning for the job. Lutnick, by many reports, including my own reporting, has been going after Scott Bessent. He's the head of the transition, so you might think he shouldn't be dropping opposition research on some of the other choices, but apparently he's been doing that. And both of them have been having their supporters call Donald Trump to say, you should pick my guy. You could imagine a scenario where one becomes head of the Economic Council and one becomes Treasury Secretary. But at this point, I'm not sure. If I were a McKinsey consultant, I'd recommend giving those two guys a partnership on dealing with the economic policy. So we'll see. Larry Kudlow, who is publicly supporting Scott Bessent for Treasury, took himself out of the running for either of those two jobs today. So again, don't be shocked if while we're talking here, the Treasury Secretary or NEC is announced. It could happen. It could kick into next week. And one thing Donald Trump doesn't like is when the staff, the people working with him for him fight and the fights become public. At some point, he likes it because he likes a good Lord of the Flies shoebox diorama. But eventually, he doesn't like it, and that could happen. Now, another thing he typically doesn't like is when people who work for him are getting a lot of attention, a lot of positive press. And he's picked people for the cabinet in Tulsi Gabbard, Bobby Kennedy, not for the cabinet, but Musk and Ramaswamy, uh, and others. He picked a lot of people who are going to get a lot of media coverage. And I'm not sure how he's going to feel about that. He seems into it now, and I can see the gratitude in his eyes because they all helped him get elected. But I wonder how long that's going to go forward. The other thing I wonder about was just how bad the vetting was of these people who've been announced. Okay. Mar-a-Lago is a seat of the pants operation. As you've seen in the press reports, some of these people are given jobs like on a whim. The Matt Gaetz thing seems to have happened in a shorter period of time than a Matt Gaetz TikTok video. Like just all of a sudden he was AG nominee. Whenever new things come out about a nominee, designate, or a new personnel choice that have never been reported before, the question always comes: did the vetters know about it? And sometimes they lie and say, "Oh, yes, we knew all about this. It's not a big deal." Sometimes they say, "Oh, we didn't know about that. That should have been disclosed to us." I can't blame the nominees, designates, because they're like given the jobs in 20 seconds. It's not really their responsibility to say, "You haven't vetted me enough." Okay. So I guarantee you, and I don't guarantee often, I guarantee you that all five controversial nominees, five and counting, are going to have things come out about them between now and their confirmation hearings, if they have hearings, that are new and distasteful to their families. I guarantee it. Now, I'm not saying it's all going to be, shockingly negative, and certainly not that it won't be disqualifying. And Donald Trump's bar for disqualifying, very high, maybe non-existent, but it's going to happen to all five of them, and it already has in some cases. So the person today who's having the most time in the barrel, and again, I say, go to any website of ABC News, New York Times, Washington Post. The coverage of the Trump transition is all about nominees, controversial nominees. There's a little bit of policy, but Trump himself has been pretty low profile, and it's all about uh, the departments they've been nominated to head don't want them, or here's some past statements they've made, or here's some things about them that are being discovered. And again, Pete Hegseth, the designate for Defense Department, is today the one getting the most poured on his head. Number one, he's got a tattoo. There's some question if he's got one tattoo or two, but one of his tattoos allegedly caused someone who served with him to say he's a white supremacist. Okay. I don't really understand that one, but that's out there. Another, which you can find in the Associated Press, the Washington Post, and elsewhere, is he was apparently accused in 2017 of sexual assault in a hotel. I'm very much, as you know, into presumption of grace, presumption of innocence. I don't really relish talking about this stuff, but it's out there as something that I heard about a couple days ago. And I've heard other stories about him. And again, I don't want to be provocative. I'm just saying there's going to be more about his life that comes out. It's not clear to me. The campaign sort of is mixed about they knew about it, but they didn't know everything about it. The transition, not the campaign. I'm just saying, as we have this ongoing conversation, how many of the five will be confirmed? Nome, Hegseth, Gates, Gabbard. Always forget the fifth. Who's the fifth? Help me out, Noah. Who's the fifth? Who am I forgetting? Nome, Hegseth,
Gates, Gabbard.
Gates, Gabbard, and who's the fifth?
Jeez.
Oh, Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, the big one. All right, those five. Okay, they're all just gonna have rollicking stories. And Bobby Kennedy has a special problem because uh, because of the abortion and healthcare. He's gonna have problems on like substance as opposed to some of this other stuff. Okay, so JD Vance has been this question: what's his role going to be in the transition and the administration? JD Vance tweeted about this tattoo thing. And again, there'll probably be people on here who can tell me more about the tattoo thing than I've read so far. But he tweeted about how this is anti-Christian bigotry. Now, again, from what I already read, it seems like it's a little bit of a straw man. He's defending a tattoo that is a Christian symbol, not the tattoo that the person who warned about. That's at least what I've read so far. What else is JD Vance doing? Reportedly making calls for Matt Gaetz. JD Vance was not a senator for very long, but he does, the world's greatest deliberative body, the House of Lords. Once you're in the club, you're in the club. So he's making calls for Matt Gaetz, and they're very friendly. Matt Gaetz supported J.D. Vance early on in his quest for the nomination to be a senator. So they're very tight. Now, it's a funny thing about confirmation. Again, these people haven't had background checks by the FBI. They haven't been formally nominated. I'm quite certain of that. The papers haven't been filed. That has to happen. Then there have to be courtesy calls. Then there have to be hearings scheduled. Then there have to be hearings, then a committee vote. I keep running through this chronology because it's important. Then a floor vote. Okay, that's how they get confirmed. Do not confuse this with the Bork hearings. Okay, there's two kinds of confirmation fights. There's ones where the other party's in the majority and you've got to win votes of the other party. And then there's ones where you're in the majority. And now that the rules have changed, you just need 50 votes. That's all this is about. If any Democrats vote for any of these five, they'll be confirmed because there'll be more than enough Republican votes. I don't think any Democrats or meaningful numbers are going to vote for them. So you're talking about holding all but three of the Republican senators. That's what it's about. So if you want to listen to the comments of other Republican senators who are likely, if they don't vote yes, it's done, you can. But really, it's just about for each of the nominees, who are the Republicans who might vote no? And what are they saying? Very few have said they're for the five. Some have. Very few, I don't think any have said they're against because people now keep their powder dry, as they say. What is the standard? If you were sitting at a dinner party or at a political science class and somebody said, okay, person X has been nominated to be head of the Pentagon, Secretary of Defense, and he was accused 7 years ago of sexual assault, accused. Is that disqualifying? Be interesting to know. Maybe if you're dinner party tonight or barbecue, you can ask around. Somebody who is nominated by a pro-life president for head of HHS is pro-choice. Would that be disqualifying? Okay. Somebody who is nominated to be attorney general was investigated by the Justice Department for alleged crimes related to illicit payments and improper sexual activity, etc. In some worlds, some of the things we already know about these five would disqualify them for a normal administration. It would be like, well, of course, we're not going to give them that job. Donald Trump, as I said before, has different standards. And we live in a time when standards are different. Okay. And the facts matter. I've told you some of the things about Pete Hegseth tonight. I read the stories pretty quickly. I haven't done any of my own reporting. I've heard about them for a couple days. As I said, the facts matter at least somewhat. What actually happened? But they don't matter completely because there's a playbook that's been used by many, although perfected by the Clinton operation. How do you counteract these allegations in the context of a nomination fight? One thing you do is you're indignant. You just say they're doing this because they're trying to destroy this person, Donald Trump. Another is you find the weakest link in the attacks. They say he robbed a bank and he was dressed as a clown, and the response is indignantly, he's never dressed as a clown. Don't address whether he robbed the bank. Another is to say the Democrats are worse. You're already seeing all of these things. Say they're old allegations. The Clinton team was masterful at this stuff. And today you've got social media and podcasts. You've got lots of ways to mobilize your folks. And nobody does indignant denial better than Team Trump. They're great. So what I'm saying is you're going to see a lot of allegations against the five and maybe others that under other circumstances might bring people down. But there are lots of reasons to think again that they'll be more likely to stay in. I've talked this morning about my point of view on recess appointments. And without going back down in the weeds, I'll say again, I really think it's a red herring because the only way to do a recess appointment, unless Donald Trump wants to take the unprecedented step of trying to say he's got the authority to dismiss Congress, to put them into recess and start making appointments, which if he did, it'd be a war with his own party, is if the Senate agrees for a recess appointment. And what I said is the only way to do that is to get 50 votes. So if they can get 50 votes to let Donald Trump do recess appointments, at which point he could go wild and name anybody he wanted to anything. You'd take the 50 votes and you'd apply it to the nominees who were having trouble getting confirmed. I said this morning, I didn't understand why no one else was saying this. It seemed so obvious to me. I got a little backup today. Please put up the tweet. I found somebody else who seems to be taking the point of view I have, that this resource appointment thing doesn't make any sense. And my backup came from the new Senate Majority Leader to be John Thune, the same Republicans that you mentioned. He was asked about so and so voting against so and so. Might have a problem voting for somebody under regular order, probably would also have a problem voting to put the Senate into recess. In other words, if Susan Collins says, I'm not voting for Matt Gaetz for Attorney General to confirm him, she's not going to say, I vote to recess the Senate so President Trump can nominate Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General, plus other people. To me, it doesn't make any sense. So John Thune seems to agree. So you'll continue to hear about recess appointments as a possibility, but I really think we're talking about, can he get 50 votes plus to get these people confirmed? All right. I'm going to talk about the Democrats for a little bit, then bring in Meghan, then bring in you all. If you're here on the two-way platform, you want to ask a question about anything, please raise your electronic hand. We'll get to many of you in a moment. Okay. The Democrats, I would say, did not have the best day for coming back and for unity and figuring this out. But if you think that there's a certain phase of reckoning with what happened that has to take place, and I think that's probably right. What went wrong in the campaign? What should happen next? They had some of those family conversations today in public. Okay. First thing was Axios reported that Nancy Pelosi speaking out about what Biden did and what Harris did. Some Democrats anonymously from the House told Axios Nancy Pelosi should basically step aside, let Hakeem Jeffries lead the party. She's been in this extraordinary position of no longer the leader, the speaker, the minority leader, but still being very active. And of course, it wasn't Hakeem Jeffries who got Joe Biden out of the race. So she's still a massive force. In my recollection, it's the first time I've ever heard this about Nancy Pelosi from when she was speaker, leader, or since she became emerita. Never heard this kind of thing. It's pretty significant in the party's thinking about the future to say some voices, and I trust the reporter who wrote the story, some serious Democratic voices saying, Nancy Pelosi, like, step aside. Our path forward does not involve you playing the godmother role that you played before. Number two, story in Politico about the DNC chair race, quoting a lot of DNC members saying, we need somebody more centrist. We need the party to move more to the center. That's an argument that it's out there, and it's a critique of what went wrong. But again, a lot of DNC members are liberal. A lot of the activists in the party are liberal. It's going to be an interesting fight to see who wins that and who's the face of the party and who makes a judgment about what they can do from the DNC in the minority to reposition the party in a serious way. Three, the finance chair of the DNC wrote a letter to the big donors. The big donors get a lot of attention from the press. They're great sources and they're influential in the party. And a lot of them think they could run a presidential campaign. They're obviously pissed off because we've talked about this the other night with Steve Elmendorf. They were briefed regularly by the Harris campaign. We're ahead. We're going to win this. It's tied. We're going to win it. And so their return on investment was crappy. And they want to know, we gave you all this money and you lost and you told us you were going to win. So it suggests you don't have great data. And a lot of these people are business people who have great data in their professions and they want to know. So the finance chair wrote them a letter saying, we got to get to the bottom of this. We were shocked we lost all 7 battleground states. So again, that's a reckoning because the new DNC chair and the new DNC finance chair, if they're going to rebuild the party, they need these same donors to write big checks in 24, 25, 26. And right now, and this happens after the party, either party loses, they're not in a check writing mood. They're not in a Zelle mood or wire transfer mood because, again, they were misled, maybe not on purpose. And then the big super PAC that supported the Harris campaign spent like close to $1 billion on their own, according to the New York Times. And again, people are wondering, was that money well spent? Those donors are wondering it. The activists, the consultants who weren't part of feeding at that trough are wondering, how did we lose with all that money? All right. Meghan McCain. I'm so excited. Meghan and I texted a little this week, but we haven't talked. And I'm so interested to ask Megan about 180 questions. Megan, welcome in.
First of all, you sound a little sick. I hope you're feeling better.
Oh, I'm more than a little sick. I shouldn't be doing any shows rather than not to a day. I appreciate you asking. What I like in particular is, and I don't want to be too TMI here, but people don't like the fact that I'm occasionally burping on the air, and I'm burping because I'm swallowing all my mucus. So apologies, but I see that in the chat. I've even gotten some emails about it. I don't feel great. Thank you for noticing. Hopefully I'll be fine by Monday. Megan, I want to ask you about so much. And again, we'll take your questions for Megan soon. So raise your hands. First, I want to ask you about the five nominees because I'm always so interested because you've just got such a great fingertip feel and high human intelligence for these people. Whether you think they're going to be confirmed, but also just sort of what you think about their picks. And I'll start with someone who's your close personal friend, Tulsi Gabbard, and just wonder how you think she's doing. Like, how's that going so far for her, do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's always wonderful to be with everyone on two-way. Um, okay, as for Tulsi, I think I've been really disappointed to see people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and AOC slander her the way she's been slandered for, I mean, I think almost a decade. It started with Hillary Clinton calling her a Russian asset. For people that don't know, I'm not trying to like humble brag here. Tulsi's a very close personal friend of mine and my husband's,
Yeah.
and I am
She's
legally
like
allowed.
she's one of your best friends, right?
She's one of my best friends. Yes. I
Yeah.
don't want to, it sounds weird now because I don't want to be like, oh, I'm good friends with her, but this has a point. Um, she, I am not legally allowed to travel to Russia. And if she were a Russian agent, she's doing I'm like the really wrong pick. We have very, significant foreign policy disagreements. And I think she also has like high level army. I think she's a lieutenant colonel in the army. And if there was a real belief that she were someone who was, a Russian asset, there should have been investigations by Debbie Wasserman Schultz that it should have been done years ago if they actually believe that. I don't think they actually believe that. I think it's something that there's also a clip from Barry Weiss on Joe Rogan that's going viral again where Barry Weiss
Yeah.
this up and Joe presses her on it and she cannot answer it. And anytime people are pressed on it, they cannot answer it. So I'm just disappointed to see that come back again. If you have problems with her politics or you don't think she's, a whatever reputable person, but these people need to start delivering evidence if they actually have it. But I do not believe it. I never have. And one of the things we actually originally bonded over when we met like 8 years ago was lies being told about both of us in the press that we felt like we didn't have control over. And like our first meeting ever, I felt like I was really seen by another woman for a very unique reason. And it's hard. It's hard to watch as a friend. I hate it.
Yeah. Um, I don't turn you into her spokesperson, but she did say things about President Assad of Syria
Mhm.
that seemed to many people's ears controversial and unwise. Do you have a point of view about that?
Oh, before we met, I came out and was very critical of it. And then getting to know her, the thing that I've really understood, and I'm I'm very hawkish. I was much more hawkish before my brother's final deployment in Afghanistan because my brothers have really turned much less hawkish than they used to be because of
Yeah.
their life experience in war. And my take on everything I know about Tulsi is that she hates war so much she would go meet with the devil himself if she thought it could prevent more. And
Right.
could be a perspective you like. It's a perspective you cannot like, but I don't it also for me rang a lot more hollow, the criticism that when I found out that Nancy Pelosi did the same thing right
Hmm.
before.
Yep.
So if it's so bad, why was Nancy Pelosi doing it? And again, I'm
Yep.
not her spokesperson. Everyone can think what they want. I just know her deeply on a personal level, and her character is something I will vouch for. And I have been getting weirdly like attacked for supporting, and I just put a post up on my social just as a friend, and I don't know, she's very divisive, and so am I. So
Yeah. I wish you would address the Syria thing. I wish you would make a video and explain it, just because that's the one that I think is for a lot of people just sort of black and white. You could say, as you said, like President Trump, I'll go anywhere to meet with anybody. You can't not engage with the people who are causing wars. But
I think she will be asked about it, and I think she will
yeah.
address it
Oh,
for whatever
exactly,
it's worth. I
exactly.
think that
And
that will be
and
soon.
this is something, and this is a point I want to make, which some people who are maybe new to following this stuff don't know. You're not supposed to talk and do interviews after you're designated as a nominee. Yeah, you're not supposed to go out and do stuff. And sometimes, like with Pete Hegseth, his lawyers have been forced to make statements. But I wish she'd addressed it before. But I don't. Everybody should extend the presumption of grace. Megan knows her really well. I know her a little bit. I'm
Mhm.
always struck by how much people who know her love her and respect her and care about her and think she has a great heart. And so since I've met her and I've talked to her, she's almost magical. What's the right word? Just there's a spirit to her that is quite compelling. That is, if you know her and get to spend time with her, you want to give her the benefit of the doubt. And I like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. But I hope whether she ends up being confirmed or not, I just hope people are not. The mob does not descend upon her, and the Democrats are already doing it. They don't like that she left the party, yeah.
Mhm.
And they want to stop her. So that's
My
her.
daughters
You
think
and
she's
I, yeah.
Moana for whatever that's worth. Like
Say
think
say again.
my daughters think she's Moana, like the
Yeah.
Disney movie. They don't think she's real either for whatever that's worth. I really,
Any
and trust
yeah.
me, I am the son of warmonger McCain, that libertarians all day, every day. And I say that that's a horrible slur that people say to me every day. I obviously don't
Yeah.
about him.
Yeah.
I really think people should, I don't think she'd be friends with someone like me if if that were the type of person she is. And I think that women like AOC should really, someone like her who's as polarizing and controversial too, should quite frankly know better. I was
Yeah.
really disappointed to see her doing that, because I
Yep.
could say a lot of things about her, and I don't, because I try to just as you give people as benefit of the doubt as much as I can.
Yeah. Your dad, by his own acknowledgement, made a lot of mistakes in his life. People make mistakes. He lived a long and colorful life.
Yes.
But anybody who knew him knew he had a huge heart, loved the country, cared about making positive change, and and that's why he was the most popular politician in America for almost 10 years, because people could see the authenticity in him. And yet he was attacked all the time. He went
Mhm.
through this scandal. Again, a lot of people on here will never heard of the Keating Five, but he
Mhm.
went through a huge scandal, and and he was, as anyone who's attacked in public is, resentful that people said they're accusing him of being all these things. And he's like, look at the totality of my life. Like, this was some small mistakes in the totality of my life. And that's how I wish the press would cover people. Okay. Now, you and I had about a year-long colloquy about Bobby Kennedy, because we
Yeah.
both knew people who were not wanting to vote for Biden or Trump when it was Biden, and saw in him a bunch of stuff. I thought his announcement address was incredible. How are you feeling about his nomination? Does that seem good to you? Are you glad he's going to be HHS secretary
I think he
if
gets
he's
more.
confirmed? Yeah.
I think he does. I think that's going to be a hard one to take out. Look, I have mixed feelings about him. There's a part of me that's I was pregnant during COVID, gave birth during COVID. Any mom who has had young kids during COVID, I'm sorry, you're radicalized towards medical establishment. You just are. And I saw a tweet just before I came on that said the same people criticizing RFK are the same people that said you had to wear a mask to go in the pool and we had to mask our children. And the masking of kids, I don't think there's been like enough analysis of the trauma left over for moms and kids for the long term like results of having to mask children. When I was looking for a preschool, it was the number one thing in DC that I look for. I said we cannot mask them, period. And finding one was very difficult at the
Yep.
time. And so I think the problem is I have a lot of questions about being. There's a lot of lies that we're told. And again, I'm not like a. I don't think any harm should come to Fauci, but I'm not a fan. There are a lot of lies told from the beginning. The very first part of COVID, masks don't work. Get rid of your masks. That was a lie. They needed it for healthcare workers. Why lie? Just say, Megan, if you have masks, donate. Americans are generous. They will. And so I think the questioning of medical establishments is something that is very complex. Every girlfriend I have, except two, is a total skeptic, putting on their
Yep.
Instagram all the time. So he's really hit into that. On the other side, I love vaccines. I'm so grateful for them. Whooping cough is breaking out in places in LA and New York City, and measles outbreak scares the living out of me, petrifies me. My kids are fully vaxxed in the normal way. I don't want him. I When I interviewed him, I said, "Would you take away vaccines?" He said no. I still asked my pediatrician today, like if that is a thing that I need to worry about. So he's a mixed bag for me. I understand why he's gotten to this place, but I still love and trust many doctors and medical professionals. And on a private note, my dad was treated for brain cancer at NIH, and they're true angels and miracle workers. So I don't like the demonization of everything. Um, and I just have questions and concerns like I always have. And then his character issues. I mean, he was just accused of sleeping with a reporter, having a sexual what a liaison with a reporter just recently. I just think, I have questions about his capacity to just hold that level of office.
Yeah. All right, another person you know is Pete Hegseth. You knew him at Fox, where you both worked. What's your view of his nomination?
I couldn't believe he is nominated. And I say that with absolute respect. And when that happened, my like Fox chain, I have text chains with women that I worked with at Fox. Like it was like, bah, 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 like exploding everywhere. And he's fun. Like he's the guy you would definitely want to go like have a drink with, like hang out with. Also, the thing on his tattoo, that's a very common military tattoo. It's a Jerusalem cross, I believe. A lot of guys that I know that are in the military have that. I don't think that's gonna fly. I don't perceive if that's a Nazi tattoo, then there's that's I don't believe that. I think that's just a reach. Um, I would love a different pick. I really have concerns again, same thing. Like he's never run any kind of, any kind of government organization. We're talking about 2.5 million people. But I just don't understand why having experience of any kind in government has become such a negative. It still confuses me. It has confuses me. I think we're talking about like someone who could have the nuclear codes if like another war breaks out. And like, no, he's not my choice. I think he's a very nice man, very fun. But I'm uncomfortable with him as the pick. And apparently I'm like the only one because a lot of Republicans are really excited about it.
Yeah, but again, your lack of comfort is you just don't think he's got the management experience and kind of the demeanor to be a good Pentagon chief. Is that?
It's the experience more than
Yeah,
anything. And also it's just again, I am a host. I've been a, host my whole life. I do not have the experience to run the Pentagon. And I say that
right,
like total respect. And I think we're living in this like Truman Show area where it's like if you're on TV, that automatically means you're experienced and
right.
have something to do. And to me, this is like all of his picks so far, except for Mike Huckabee, Doug Burgum, and Tulsi, seem like reality show. Like you have the final rose type thing, and
Right. All right.
it's making me anxious.
Yeah.
Again,
How about Christy Nome to keep us safe, the homeland safe?
I just same thing. It's like there's just not a lot of experience there. And what you said on I saw two-way a while ago, referencing her relationship with Corey Lewandowski, and there just seems to be a lot of like quid pro quo. Who's been the most loyal? Who's been the most loyal to my team? And I think with all of these things, we should have the most qualified person. These are very, very serious times, and I think we need very, very serious people. I liked Christine Elm during the pandemic. She kept Dakota, open and safe. I really like her. I think that dog thing really hurt her reputation, really weirds people out. It's the number one thing people know about her. But I'm much more open to her than I am Matt Gaetz.
Okay. And then Matt Gates. Now, tell me about your history with Matt Gates, if any.
I don't have a personal history with him other than he came on The View and I interviewed him. And he was very surprised that I had been to his district of Destin, Florida. And I knew his favorite crab restaurant, which happened to be my dad's favorite crab restaurant. So that's my experience with him. I'm sure my husband wrote a column that kind of went semi-viral, highly criticizing him. I wouldn't read it if you are a family person and don't like swearing. Is a little graphic even for me. When my husband wrote, he scares the living what out of me. He has no business
Yeah.
being attorney general. I don't think I talked to a friend of mine today who does know him that says that like he's like a maniac, like he's like a crazy person, that alleged from my friend, because I don't want to get sued. But his behavior, his conduct, the way he talks to people, again, we're talking about like the most powerful position, one of the most powerful positions in the world, and I wouldn't trust him to babysit my kids. So why should he
Tell
be attorney general?
your husband's column was kind of extraordinary. Tell people where they can read it.
The Transom is the name of his newsletter, and he told me he was writing it, and I was like, okay. And then I read it, and I was like, oh wow, he went total scorched earth on him. My
Yeah.
husband is a evangelical Christian who grew up with he's a pretty grossed out by the turn of letting go of our values, and Matt Gaetz is accused of sex trafficking underage teenage girls. It's pretty extreme.
Megan's husband, in addition to being a very nice guy and a great dad, is a fabulous writer.
Thank you.
And if you're interested in hearing the case against Matt Gates, again, made in a pretty graphic way, I recommend it to you.
Thank you.
All right, last question, and then we're going to go to your questions for Megan. Um, how do you think? I'd like you just because again, your human intelligence is so high. How do you think Donald Trump is dealing with all this nomination controversy of having Elon Musk, who's, in some ways a more powerful figure, more famous figure? How do you think he's dealing with having all these big personalities around him?
Well, I'm told he's sick too. whatever that's worth, like that he is not feeling well.
Yeah.
I will say that him last night joking that Elon won't leave, I thought was like an interesting tea leaf. Like, because I
Uh-huh.
am like, Elon, don't you have your own family in your house? And like, don't you want to go home, or you just want to like, is he, I'm curious if he's literally gonna like move into the White House and be in the Oval Office every day. It's really bizarre. I think he's probably excited, and Trump is an agent of chaos, and he's probably like, you asked for change and I'm giving it to you. The question I have is, if anyone's ever made an impulsive decision in their life, and Lord knows I certainly have. I have a tattoo on my foot to prove it. Sometimes you make impulsive decisions and you're like, I just want radical change in my life. I just need everything to change. And then you do it and you're like, what did I do? And I'm wondering if the American Republic is going to have any reaction, especially to people like Matt Gaetz, like, wait, what did we do? We wanted change, but I didn't want chaos. And that's the question I have going into this next administration. And as one of my friends pointed out earlier today, 72 million people did not vote for him, which is still a big part of the electorate. And I was just wishing for a more traditional cabinet in general, but everything I ever want in politics doesn't happen. So maybe I should have wished for chaos.
Uh, For those of you, I'm sure most of you see Megan somewhere or heard her on her podcast. For those of you who are listening to her, maybe for the first time, maybe some of you, this is why she's got so many fans. This is why we love having her on. She's a unique voice, and you talk about authenticity, you talk about clarity, and again, I've said this to you before. Your dad would be so proud of the role you're playing in speaking about all this stuff in such a human and intelligent way. It's really incredible, and so grateful to have you here.
So
Now,
happy.
lucky people, now lucky people get to ask Megan questions.
Yes.
Sheila, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks where you are, who you supported for
Unmute me?
president. I did unmute you. You're loud and clear. Tell folks where you are, who you supported for president, if you want, and what's on your
Sure.
mind for Megan.
So I am in Central Virginia in Charlottesville. Although I'm a native Washingtonian, I grew up three generations. Lots of folks in and around politics, and I've worked in K-12 education for 25, 30 years teaching and policy stuff. My question originally when I thought about joining this conversation was really about education, but I have to interrupt myself because I can't believe that we are over a week out, and I've listened, first with sort of glee at the postmortem from the talking heads and politicians about what they thought happened. And as someone who lived a long time in Washington, D.C. in that world and lived and worked all over the world, I've had the blessing of living in red America, so to speak, for the last 15 or so years. And I move in and out of those worlds, and my Ivy League educated brother is like barely talking to me. So thank you for maybe if I can work it out here, we can figure that out.
Sheila, I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment to give some news. Caroline Leavitt is going to be the White House press secretary. She ran for Congress in New Hampshire. She used to work for Elise Stefanik, and she was the press secretary in the campaign. She's been on the list from the beginning. And I think she just had a baby. I believe she just had a baby. Pretty sure. So that's exciting for her. Sheila.
So my question really, especially someone like you, Megan, and who deeply intimately familiar with this world, none of the postmortems I hear, and I did vote for Trump 3 times, first time reluctantly, and the second 2 times as a supporter, worked a little bit on the campaign here. It's like I think the Democrats have a Peg Bundy problem. This might be inappropriate, but remember, if anyone's old enough to remember Peg Bundy saying in her tight pants to her husband, Al, do these pants make me look fat? And he said, Peg, it's not the pants that make you look fat. It's the fat that makes you look fat. And even as early as today, I mean, as recently as today, I hear the co-chair of the Harris campaign saying we have a message problem. And your fellow the other night says, many years of experience. We got to get to these voters in places like where I had lived in the Shenandoah Valley, and find out, get the message to them, figure out what they listen to them. And I think it's not the message. It's not the messenger, and it's not the comms, and it's not the strategy, and it's not the tactics. It is everyone I know across all classes, races, colors, sexes was just fed up with lack of common sense, lack of fairness name a policy issue, and really, really tired of being told that they don't know what they're talking about, whether they went to college or not. I know a lot of people went to college and voted for Trump. some hold their nose, some, you know, some happily. So yeah, I guess I'm interested in that first, and then I am interested in what's going to happen on the education side, and hopefully we'll have a press secretary that understands grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and can communicate a little more effectively as a model for education, English teachers in this country.
Okay, well, hold your education question for a second. Megan, I'd love for you to address her
So is your
first
question just about Democrats going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I listened to a commentator on CNN talk specifically about Virginia, and really didn't seem to understand why voters in Northern Virginia would vote differently than people in the rest of Virginia, except for Richmond and Charlottesville and, you know, some of the other smaller cities. That's shocking to me that they still can't figure that out. And the guy, and she said, well, what do you think we ought to do to reach these voters? And I don't even know who was being interviewed because I was listening in the car, and the guy said, talk to them. Go meet them, talk to them, and understand what they're actually thinking and feeling instead of telling them how they should feel.
Well, Northern Virginia isn't even that reliable anymore. She barely won Loudoun County.
Well, that's fascinating, right? I mean, that has to do with why Youngkin won and education, all that. Yeah.
I think that when it comes to Democrats and people in media who don't understand it, I absolutely respectful, because a lot of my friends work in media and a lot of my friends, I think that they are not doing their job correctly. I have the biggest reason of anyone to hate Trump and hate his supporters, and I don't hate him and I don't hate his supporters, because I think forgiveness is really important. And for my job and my life, I need to have real clarity on what's going on in the country. If I let my image and my vision of the world be so stifled, respectfully, I'll turn into Liz Cheney, and I don't want to ever be Liz Cheney, because I don't respect what she's become, because I don't understand how any pro-life woman could give that up for whatever she has now. Just my own personal beliefs. I think when it comes to education, again, when people ask what radicalized you, which is often the question that I ask people before they become, you know, Trump supporters or conservatives, 9 times out of 10 for women, it's the education, it's the masking of kids, it's the, you know, the education, it's the sexualization of children's education at a very young age. For people that don't believe it's happening, again, you're just not paying attention. It's really happening. Loudoun County in particular, for people that don't know, it's a very wealthy, traditionally blue area of Northern Virginia that was reliably blue for a long time, and then went for Governor Youngkin and almost went for Trump. What happened? A trans student raped a woman in a bathroom, and the school covered it up. And then the dad went in this big viral moment, screaming, and was thrown out by police. He sued and later won. The image and the feeling to moms like me was that our daughters are not safe in these places. And even if a girl is raped, woke culture war issues are more important to teachers unions than they are to families, and than they are about the well-being of kids. That's the thing that radicalized me. That's what radicalized that, and mostly peaceful protesting during COVID. That is what's I do not trust the left. I do not trust them with anything regarding my children going forward. And until they prove to me that they've learned lessons, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw, but AOC took the pronouns out of her Twitter bio today, which to me shows that they are learning some lessons about this. And I think that I love my friends, my Democrat friends. I wish for grace and compassion and unity in this country, but
Totally.
I do not trust that side, and I really don't trust them having anything to do with literally anything regarding my children. And I'm looking for schools right now, as Mark knows very, very well. And the mandate of what I need for schools for my kids, we're looking at private schools. It's incredible to me how much so many places cannot live up to. Are you going to be teaching sex ed to 7-year-olds? Like we're in
Private schools do. Yeah.
Just my opinion. I hope that I don't know if that answers your question. I could talk about this for hours.
Did you think that the magnitude of the results would change? Like, I thought that the people that I, you know, have argued about this stuff with for a long time now, I thought, oh, well, now that they see that it's not, I'm not the crazy one, right? That there's many people who supported this, you know, holding their nose or not. I'm just surprised that even now, with that kind of result, people are still, even as they say they're trying to understand it, they're still, I think they just don't get that people, it's really about a role of government, right? Like what's the role of government in your life? And I think most of the people that I know who vote for him, just they want to be left alone. They don't want the government to tell them what shots to take and what, you know, what they want their kids to learn to read and write in school. That's all they want. Like, do no harm in medicine. Do that first, right? And
Also,
do that
the teachers
well.
do not know better than the parents. And the
Right.
attitude of so many teachers and the head of the teachers union saying that we know, and there were quotes about it during COVID, that we know better. Like I could, like, this is a family show. I'm not going to say what I would normally say, but like that is radical insanity. Parents, I know what's good for my kids. Parents don't. I will also say, when it comes to people on the left and Democrats, I had a friend on today who is a very progressive lesbian host. Her podcast, and she has a TikTok account with like 6 million followers. Her following is at Under the Desk News. I want to have a conversation with my friends on the left, and she said Nancy Pelosi has got to go, and she's leading us to hell. That we have to have new leadership, and that even for her, we have to have a space where men feel included. And we've gone too far with like the girl bossification. And I think as long as Nancy Pelosi, who just announced that she's going to run for reelection again, would be 86 at the time of the end of her tenure, I just don't think there's a future for any party that is going to let these octogenarians, and mine included, by the way, suck the lifeblood out of this country in the way that they are. And I think for Democrats, I like Rahm Emanuel. I think he's a smart man. If he does end up being the head of the DNC, I think that's a really solid choice for a lot of different reasons. I think he understands America in a realistic way. But if you're going to have people like AOC and the squad running things, this party will not survive. Americans do not want it. They do not like it. And we're going to continue winning elections until they modify, at my belief.
Megan, why do you say this is a family show?
Well, I have a
So,
dirty mouth sometimes, and I
I
don't want
know.
to offend anyone on
Yeah,
here.
that's right.
I see
That's
some,
right.
I
Yeah.
want
Okay.
to.
Sheila, do you want me to just address education in the Trump administration in general, or did you have a specific question?
Well, I can summarize it quickly. I guess there's a lot I could talk about, but my biggest question is, I think the few things that he said about what he wants to do in this term, and I think he didn't do much at all in the last term, although I think a couple good things in higher ed, and I'm very much a big school choice supporter, but the stuff he's talking about doing is going to get him into culture wars that typical governors, even governors who come in and say, we're going to fix the standards, we're going to teach history, we're going to, and but then it gets ugly and it gets really messy really fast, and they usually back off because they don't want that culture war. This president seems not to be afraid of that, but I just, as a practical matter, which of his priorities are really, or is he capable of accomplishing, and at what point does he back off? Because it seems to
Yeah.
be a huge part of what he says he wants to do. And I think it's important.
Right. Yeah. So I think school choice is a great civil rights issue of our time.
Mhm.
And I think the Republican Party is the only party that will advocate for it. Unfortunately, in the 90s, they lost some high profile battles and they lost the courage of their convictions to really drive it. Donald Trump has talked about it for 10 years. I don't think there's evidence he's passionate about it. But
Right.
it's also the case, as he believes, that this is a 10th Amendment thing. There
Yeah.
shouldn't there so little of the money spent on education comes from Washington. I think it's like 10%. Governors should be in charge of education, and they largely are. And so I don't really, when people demand presidential candidates talk about this, yes, they can set an example, but it's really up to the governors. And I think you're going to see, I'd be curious to see who they make head of the Department of Education, because he wants to get rid of it. And I think one of the things I hate most about politics is when people accuse the other party of not caring about kids. Democrats care about educating kids, and so do Republicans. However, Democrats side with the teachers unions whose leadership don't care about educating kids as much as they care about their own prerogatives. And the Democratic Party's in denial about that. And Democrats can't answer the question of governance of schools in large metropolitan areas, which has gotten decades long history of failure. George W. Bush cared a lot about this, but he didn't end up doing very much about it. Did some, but he also made a deal with the Democrats, with Ted Kennedy and George Miller, to have a No Child Left Behind, which created a larger role for the federal government in education, which was an innovative thought, but it turned a lot of people on the right against the notion of presidents doing much about education. So I wouldn't be super optimistic about Donald Trump doing anything meaningful, but I would like Republican governors and Republicans who could run for mayors of big cities to make school choice the great civil rights issue of our time and try to use that to help kids, because it should be about helping kids. And then I would like people who are teachers to tell their union, we need to reorient ourselves less about our own prerogatives and more about kids. That's what I'd like. And I think Donald Trump won't stand in the way of that, but I can't imagine he's going to do much to further my goals, which he largely shares, but it's hard because the president really doesn't have much to do with it. Sheila, thanks for coming. How'd you find out about two-way?
I think on Twitter. I can't honestly remember.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Bring all your friends.
I will.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you. Have a great night, a great weekend. All right. I enjoyed that conversation. Sam, welcome in. Tell folks where you are, who you're supported for president, what's on your mind, and if you got that shirt from the Tucker Carlson collection.
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I prefer maybe not to mention who I
That's all right. All good. Just tell us what's on your mind.
to immediately introduce some implicit bias into some of the comments I was going to make, but it's kind of coincidental. I've got two comments I wanted to make. One, since Megan's on, it's a little coincidental, but it goes back to, I think maybe election night. There was some comments made about, I think like the Madison Square Garden rally, and I was very pro-ish and things like that. And I think it's Alex Castellanos was on as well. He made a few comments to this regard, and it just made me. It occurred to me that I don't think that people can really understand what's happening with the working class in the country unless they really understand what's happening with men and boys. And there was a mom, I think, from Rhode Island who spoke to this very eloquently, maybe on the morning meeting a few days ago. There's a great book. I'd suggest those that are interested maybe check it out. It's called The Boys and Men by Richard Reeves. If you want to kind of take a look at that and understand, I think it gives some additional insights as to some of the dynamics we saw with the Washington selection. But the main thing I wanted to talk about is really the media and how we can collectively address the harm that the media has inflicted on the American people. In my view, it's beyond negligence. It's beyond gross negligence. It feels like it's willful and it's against the public interest.
Are you talking about the bias against Republicans and the bias against Trump?
Yeah, I mean, it's manifested, I guess most recently in that respect, but they kind of pick and choose their issues and they push that bias, regardless of what it is or who it involves. And I think it's just a huge betrayal of the public interest, and they really contributed to people including yourself have called a mental health crisis in the country. And so I just had an idea. I was curious if maybe you and Sean and Dan might even do like a 1 or 2 hour special just to talk about the media, and because I would really like to understand how we can impose some accountability. I'd like to understand a little bit better the economics of that and how it works. The business model. I'd like to understand. In one conversation, you guys touched a little bit on just kind of the mechanical and procedural processes around how the people are chosen to be in the room and things like that when the White House is communicating with the public.
Yeah.
I would love to learn how, what's the difference between the rules and how the White House is required to communicate with the public via the press, and kind of what are just norms, things like that. So
yeah.
Just throwing
all
that
right,
out.
so Sam, those are two great topics. Men and boys, I agree with you, a huge issue. I'll say briefly about the press and then ask Megan to address it. And again, we both could talk about it for several hours. We do talk about it all the time, both on this show and the morning meeting.
We could literally do like a 6-hour stream.
Yeah, we could.
I could talk about this for days.
Yeah. Sam, all I'll say is that the real solution is the consumer. If the consumers reward good media, and we're so happy Two Way's doing well, but we need to do better, because if people reward fair media, then more people will do fair media. The reason why there's a lot of unfair media is because that's their business model, and it's not working great for them because most of them are struggling. but that's where they get their revenue, from people who want them to be unfair. And so if consumers and people, Bernie Sanders supporters don't think the media does a good job, Donald Trump supporters don't think they do. Kamala Harris supporters don't either. It's a lot of unhappiness with the media. And so if consumers reward entities and organizations, I hope like this one, that do a good job, that's the best corrective. Government laws or expecting the media to fix themselves, those aren't going to happen. Megan.
I have lots of friends who work in corporate media at major news networks, all of them basically, because I've worked at many of them. And everyone who's not on Fox News is miserable and panicking because they see the trend lines of ratings. And again, I actually put this in my Substack today, the trend lines of MSNBC having its lowest ratings since 2001, CNN its lowest ratings in the 25 to 54 demographic, which is kind of the only demographic that matters, this lowest since the year 2000. My old show, The View, there's a New York Post article talking about how executives and basically the newsrooms in general are panicking because they don't have any conservatives on the show. And it's supposed to be a show representing American women. And clearly there's a lot of American women who are conservative and like Trump. So I actually have a lot of faith in this kind of media because I really do think, we are in an era where Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan are more influential media figures than anybody hosting primetime election night. Way more influential and important than George Stephanopoulos. And George Stephanopoulos, I'm sure, is making I just read that Anderson Cooper is making $20 million a year. Now, I think Anderson Cooper is a very nice man. This is not a personal issue with him. $20 million a year for those ratings and that show, it's not a sustainable business model. No one is watching it. Respectful to him. Again, he's actually a very nice man. I have no problem with him. But I do think the content, you have got to level up and start having content that people actually want to watch. But there's such a disgust and repulsion of conservatives. And I've been in all the motherships and I've been in all the rooms where it happens with everybody. They hate you. You think they hate you. They hate Republicans. It's the reason why I can't work in those spaces anymore. I just won't do it for my mental health. And I just feel like it'll shift or they're not gonna exist anymore. I actually just saw an article too talking about how CNN may get sold. And I don't know. The Schadenfreude part of me, because again, I try and be a good Christian and show grace. There's a part of me that's really enjoying watching this dumpster fire right now. I'm really enjoying everybody starting to panic. I've been saying it for years, and all of a sudden it's happening, and I have all these people messaging me being like, "You're a genius." I also think, anecdotally, my friends that live in LA and friends that live in New York and Greenwich Village both sent me pictures of at restaurants of people wearing MAGA hats this week. I don't think the societal stigma is there anymore. And honestly, Republicans we're not histrionic, we're not precious. You can tell me a dirty joke and I'm not going to get offended. It's not edgy or cool anymore. Democrats, I always say, are the HR department. So if all of life is just going to be the HR department, including our media figures, people are not going to want to watch it. And I just want to say hi to Nancy Rommelman there, my friend. Hi.
Hi, Nancy.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I don't know if that answers your
yeah,
question because I guess I could talk about this for 9 days. So sorry.
Sam, thank you for raising those two topics, and we hope you'll come back regularly.
I didn't mean
Nancy,
to call on you.
we have to end the show, but say hi to Megan, tell her what you're doing this weekend, whatever. Have a girl visit.
Hi, Megan. Hi,
Such
Megan.
a
It's
talented writer, Nancy. I know everybody knows that, but real
Yeah.
amazing journalist.
I just want to say that when Megan and Mark have that 6-hour conversation about media, I am definitely horning in because I could talk about it all day. It is all we're talking about. And I do think a last bit of this, I think the media is going to basically self-correct because it didn't work out. And you do have a lot of independent voices, including Megan, including Ben, her husband, including Mark, including myself. And we've been here. And now people will just continually turn because that other stuff is not satisfying or true. So
Yeah. Until they come clean on the Biden acuity cover up, I think they've just got no credibility.
100%.
Their role in it, and then their failure to acknowledge it. It's just it's an epic scandal. What are you two doing this weekend?
I'm buying my daughter a car this weekend. How's that?
That's awesome. You buying it online or going to a car dealership?
No, we're actually going to go to a dealership.
Awesome. All right, Nancy, great to see you. Megan, what are you guys doing?
I'm going to this very exclusive club called Chuck E. Cheese with my kids.
Are you serious?
Yes, we go
Yeah.
when they're good. They love it so much when they've done all their chores. And I want to just thank you again so much for having me, Mark and Nancy. She's such a wonderful journalist. Everyone here is so great. And It's way more fun not being in corporate media. I'm
Yeah.
so happier, just for whatever it's worth.
That's awesome. Megan, we're so grateful to you for spending all this time with us on a
Oh.
Friday, and we hope you'll come back regularly and stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
All right, a few things. First of all, if you haven't watched Dr. John from this morning, it's about 10 minutes long. It's on YouTube. Noah put it in the chat on both YouTube and here, and I'll tweet it in the next hour or so. I'd strongly recommend it to you, and I'll put it in my Substack too. It's 10 minutes of a guy, a dad who's a doctor who lives in Tennessee, talking about why he couldn't vote for Kamala Harris. It's extraordinarily compelling. So watch that. All right. Sunday night, we've got a special. I'll be there. I'll be hosting, but Dan and Sean, who are experts in their parties about jobs in campaigns, jobs in government. We're just going to have a job fair. It's the morning meeting job fair at night, Sunday at 7 Eastern time. You'll get the links soon. I don't have them yet, but you'll get them. You can come and ask questions. How do you apply for jobs? Who gets the jobs? How do they work? That's Sunday. And then next week, Monday, we'll be back for 2 regular shows, 9 a.m. and 6. Tuesday night, tickets on sale now. There's still some left, I'm told. The morning meeting after dark. If you're in New York City or can come to New York City, speaking of Greenwich Village, was mentioned a little while ago, 4 p.m. Eastern time at local time, meet and greet with Dan and Sean and myself. And then 5 p.m., a live show, basically be the morning meeting on stage at the legendary Village Underground, part of the Comedy Cellar in the West Village. If you want to come and join us, you can ask questions, hang out with these guys, and then we'll stream it. So if you're not able to get to New York, you can watch it. But live show, our first one, we'll be doing more. I've gotten some wonderful invitations from people all over the country to host us for live shows. So we'll see. But this is the first one. So if you're able to come, please do. And I'll be back with Dan and Sean 9 a.m. on Monday. Well, see you Sunday, but then Monday. And then this show Monday night. We have some great guests lined up. And we're going to continue our D-Future series, including next week with one of the Democrats who's been the most outspoken about how the party has to change, Congressman Richie Torres of New York, who has been very critical of the failure of the left wing of the party to understand the future. So that'll be, I believe, Wednesday night next week, Congressman Torres at 6 o'clock Eastern. And we've got lots of other stuff lined up we'll tell you about. Couldn't be more grateful to you. We only had 2 of you in questioning tonight. I thought they were both fantastic. So we talked to them for some time. Always appreciate people raising their hands, and we'll get to more of you next week. And again, join us Sunday night if you can. Have a great weekend. I hopefully will be a little healthier Sunday so you don't have to listen to me like this. Bye-bye.